Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. We are continuing on with Where the Soul Leads. Today we're going to be doing chapters 7 and 8. Chapter 7, Before the Storm. The evening shadows stretched long across the dorm room as Kirishima and Bakugo leaned back against the headboard, the quiet hum of the room settling around them. Kirishima's lizard rested quietly in his lap, its spiky scales catching the fading light, while Bakugo's dog lay on both of their feet, alert but calm. Bakugo didn't move or protest. Instead, his usual sharp edges softened, and for a moment, he let himself be still. "You really don't have to stay up," Kirishima said, glancing over. "You've got class tomorrow." Bakugo didn't answer right away. He just shifted closer, leaning his head against Kirishima's shoulder like it wasn't a big deal. "Not tired," he muttered, voice low. Kirishima smiled, warm and a little surprised, but he didn't say anything. He just tilted his head slightly so Bakugo would fit better. "Just didn't want to crash without saying anything," he said after a moment. "Thought we could hang out a bit before I go." Bakugo looked at him sideways, his expression unreadable. "It's just a mission." Kirishima nodded. "Yeah, I know," he hesitated. "Still wanted to see you." Bakugo huffed. "You're such a sap." "Yeah," Kirishima said, grinning softly. "But I'm your sap." Bakugo rolled his eyes, but he didn't pull away. "Dumbass." Their fingers found each other, lacing together easily, naturally, as the night deepened around them. Kirishima's voice was almost wistful as he looked down at the lizard. "You know, when I was little, I thought this guy was a dragon, like a real powerful, manly dragon. No fire or wings, but still fierce. Always watching out for me, you know?" Bakugo snorted softly, but there was no bite in it. "Yeah, I figured mine was just some dumb dog. Always there, never doing anything cool." Kirishima ran a finger along the ridge of the lizard's back, careful of the little pointed spikes, but his eyes blinked slowly up at him, unbothered, like always. He smiled, but it was a little crooked, a little full of things he hadn't said until now. "Back when I was a kid, I thought that meant my soulmate was someone fearless, someone tough, the kind of person who walks into a fight already knowing they'll win." He paused, and I guess I was right. Bakugo stayed quiet beside him, but didn't pull away. "I thought the way he looked was how he was, all hard and tough on the outside, like he never needed anyone." He chuckled, shaking his head. "But the older I got, the more I realized that's not really it. If you get close enough, you feel how soft he really is under all that. He's got this armor, but inside, he's not as cold as he looks. Not really." Bakugo shifted, glancing at the dog lying beside him. "Mine's like that too. It's like he sees all the crap I don't want to show, doesn't care about the explosions or the yelling, just stays." There was a moment between them, easy and unforced. Kirishima's hand moved to rest near Bakugo's, brushing against his fingers. "I think that's why we're here. We get each other, and I'm glad we're figuring this out," Kirishima said softly, his voice full of something warm and genuine. I think this is what being close to someone really feels like." Bakugo's fingers tightened just a little more around his, and his gaze softened, a rare warmth shining through. "Yeah, guess we've been carrying more than ourselves around all along." The room was still wrapped in darkness when Kirishima woke. The only sound, the steady rhythm of Bakugo's breathing beside him. The warmth of his body pressed close, their hands still tangled together from the night before. Everything was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the world outside had put itself on pause, something rare after all they had been through. Kirishima stayed still for a moment, taking in the stillness, savoring the calm. He needed to get up, but it was hard to pull himself away. Kirishima blinked slowly, his eyes adjusting to the dark, the shadows playing across Bakugo's face. It was the kind of quiet that made his chest tighten with something he couldn't quite name. The lizard, nestled between them on the bed, blinked up at him lazily, its eyes glinting in the low light. Kirishima's smile was soft, and he reached down gently to scratch the lizard's head. "You're staying with Bakugo, buddy," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. For a second, he just sat there, taking in the calmness of the moment, how even the air seemed to hold its breath, how everything felt so still, as though the world outside was too far away to matter. Kirishima pressed a single kiss to Bakugo's forehead, the soft touch lingering. "I'll be back soon," he whispered, even though he knew Bakugo wouldn't hear it. He lingered for just a heartbeat longer, a quiet promise between them before the weight of duty pulled at him. The mission was waiting, and as much as he wanted to stay, he knew he couldn't. He stood up quietly, careful not to wake Bakugo, his heart aching just a little at the sight of his boyfriend still asleep, his features relaxed in a rare moment of peace. The lizard remained as calm as ever, as Kirishima headed towards the door. "I'll be back soon," he repeated, almost to himself. Bakugo woke up to an empty bed. The space where Kirishima had been was still warm, but he was gone. The lizard was curled up in its usual spot, and the dog was still sound asleep on the floor, oblivious to the fact that something had changed. Bakugo stared at the empty bed for a moment longer, the quiet settling around him. The absence was stark, but it wasn't the first time he'd woken up alone. What struck him was how different it felt this time. His gaze shifted to the lizard, who was blinking up at him, with its usual unbothered expression, and something in him softened. Bakugo ran a hand through his hair, standing up. He moved towards the window, the weight of the morning hitting him all at once. Kirishima had left for a mission, something Bakugo knew was dangerous, but still, it felt different now. With everything that had happened between them, with the way they'd both opened up, Bakugo couldn't shake the sense that he'd lost something precious. Even the lizard, always silent and still, seemed to understand. It was like it knew the feeling Bakugo was trying to ignore, the gnawing, uncomfortable emptiness that settled in his chest. "This is what it felt like when I was gone," Bakugo thought bitterly, his jaw tightening. This sucks. He glanced down at the lizard, seeing it in a new light. The creature was just like him, fierce, untouchable on the surface, but underneath, so much more. The softness of its scales, the way it relaxed when Kirishima was near, the way it would occasionally nudge him like it needed reassurance too. Maybe it wasn't just about strength. Maybe it was about the understanding, the quiet way they both had of showing up when it mattered. "Damn idiot," Bakugo muttered to himself, though there was no real heat in his words. He exhaled slowly, glancing at the door. Kirishima would be back. He had to be. But in the meantime, Bakugo was left alone with his thoughts, the lizard on his shoulder, and the unsettling feeling of missing someone in a way he hadn't known was possible. Chapter 8. After the Mission. The door to the dorm creaked open, and all heads turned as Uraraka and Tsuyu stepped inside, faces pale and heavy with exhaustion. Conversations died down instantly. Someone asked where Midoriya and Kirishima were, but the girls hesitated just for a moment, and that silence said more than words could. "Deku's still at the hospital. He's okay, but Kirishima," Uraraka finally said, her voice tight. "He got hurt. Bad. They're keeping him under observation. It's serious." The room froze. Bakugo, who had been leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, suddenly straightened. "What?" His voice was sharp, almost disbelieving. Uraraka looked at him, as though she tried to soften it, but the truth was in her eyes. The room didn't matter. The dog, now looking up at him curiously, didn't matter. The space beside him, the one that had been full of Kirishima's warmth the night before, his hand, his breath, his promise, "I'll be back soon." He hadn't heard him say it, not out loud, but he'd felt it. "Bakugo!" someone started, but he was already at the door. No one stopped him. They all knew where he was going. The hospital lights were too bright, too clean, too quiet. Bakugo hated all of it. He stalked past the front desk like he belonged there, like the woman in scrubs didn't tell him visiting hours were over, and headed straight for the room 412. He didn't knock, didn't pause. He just opened the door and froze. Kirishima was pale under the hospital sheets, tubes in his arms, bruises blooming dark across his collarbone. His face was too still. The room smelled like antiseptic and something sharp and artificial, and the only sound was the slow, steady beep of the monitor beside the bed. Bakugo didn't move for a long time. Then slowly he crossed the room and dropped into the chair beside the bed. His hands were clenched so tight they hurt, but he didn't notice. Bakugo gently placed the lizard on the edge of the bed just beside Kirishima's arm. The dog settled on the floor at his feet without a sound. "Idiot," he whispered. No response. He shifted forward, elbows on knees, voice rough and low like gravel. "You weren't supposed to get hurt like this." Still nothing. Bakugo swallowed, jaw working. "You went on that mission because you're strong, but strength doesn't mean anything if you don't come back." The lizard stirred, shifting silently on the pillow. His eyes blinked once, slow and tired. Bakugo leaned forward, closer to the bed. "I need you to wake up." He didn't mean for the words to come out that quiet, that raw, but they did. The dog looked at him, not barking, not whining, just looking like it understood too much. "Is this what it felt like?" Bakugo asked, not even sure who he was talking to anymore. "When I got taken, when you had to wait, when you didn't know if I'd come back." He let out a breath, rough and uneven. "I didn't get it then. I didn't know how bad it felt, but I do now." He glanced down at Kirishima's hands, pale against the sheets. He reached out and took it, careful but firm. "You weren't supposed to be here in this bed." A long silence. Bakugo's voice dropped to a whisper. "I can't do this without you, dumbass." The words hung there, raw and shaky and real. "I don't want to." His grip tightened, just slightly, as if trying to anchor himself in that moment. The dog came closer, settling by the side of the bed with a low, quiet breath. It didn't wag its tail. Bakugo sat there for a long time, long enough that the world outside the hospital seemed to fade. Just the soft beeping and the warmth of Kirishima's hand, and the quiet company of the red dog and the lizard who refused to leave their sides. And when Kirishima's fingers twitched, just barely against his palm, Bakugo didn't jump, didn't shout, just looked at him. His voice was steady when he whispered, "Yeah, that's right. You come back now." All right, friends, thank you so much for listening to these next 2 chapters. The next video will be the last one. It'll be chapters 9 and 10. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll come back for the last piece. See you next time.